everybody. My name's Elana Olson, and today I'm going to give a presentation on how we can help developers improve their experiences with migrating from AngularJS to Angular. So right now, there's an enormous universe of migration approaches out there today, and it can be really difficult to understand which approach is right for your application. In fact, it can be really challenging, actually. You might want to throw up that white flag and quit altogether because migrating can feel very daunting and overwhelming sometimes. And I've heard from lots of people that they have challenges with migrating. But I'm here today to tell you to get ready because it doesn't have to be as difficult as it may feel, and we want to help prepare you so that you don't feel so overwhelmed with your migration process. So today I'm going to cover 3 different things. The first is some new migration tools that are available today to help you guys. The second are some awesome advocates who have already spoken today and yesterday and are out there in the world to help you. And the third are other resources that you can utilize so that you can improve your migration approach. So a little bit about me. Again, my name is Elana, and over the summer I interned on the Google Angular team as a developer relations intern. Developer relations entails 3 things. First, you're talking with the community. You're asking each and every one of you, what are your experiences? How do you enjoy migrating? Do you enjoy migrating? What challenges are you facing? And then I translate those experiences into tools and documentation that we could provide to help improve your experience overall. Finally, I do exactly what I'm doing today. I share back out with you on what we've built and how it can actually help you. So before I continue using some terminology, I want to clarify them. When I refer to Angular, I'm talking about versions 2+. So that means Angular of today and tomorrow. And when I refer to AngularJS, I'm talking about versions 1.x. So let's talk about the tools that I built over the summer. One is called ngMigration Assistant. NgMigration Assistant is an analysis tool that scans your AngularJS application and provides a customized recommendation on which approach is right for you and for your application. And I want to give a quick little demo of it so you can really see exactly what's going on. So here we're in an example application. It's the Angular Phone Cat app that's in the AngularJS documentation. And after you install the npm package, all you have to do is type in ngma, which stands for ngMigration Assistant, and you'll get this whole list of things. First is the criteria that we're looking for. We want you to be well informed about what we're actually scanning for so that we don't have this miraculous recommendation kind of pull out of thin air. We want you to trust the system and understand exactly what we're looking for. And so we also provide statistics on your application. These statistics are found by analyzing your application based on how large it is, how many files you have, which AngularJS patterns are found. And when I refer to AngularJS patterns, I mean practices that you used in AngularJS that are not transferable to Angular. Next, we give you a recommendation. And this recommendation is customized to each and every application. Now this recommendation takes the statistics from your application and funnels it through a decision tree and produces a recommendation like this. So for this application, we recommend to use ngUpgrade, but you have to follow certain preparation steps first. And the final aspect is this files that contain AngularJS patterns and need to be modified. We want to provide you with the very first steps in order to take this migration approach, and this is where you can find them. We identify each and every file that contains certain AngularJS patterns, so you know where to start going in your application and what to start fixing. In the recommendation section previously, we also identify how you can start fixing those AngularJS patterns. So let's look at the criteria a little bit more. First is the complexity. That's looking at how many components you have and exactly how big your application really is. We look at your app size as well, so we're looking at the source lines, which means it helps us determine the feasibility of certain migration approaches over others. We also look at how many files and folders you have, again, the AngularJS patterns, and the preparation steps necessary. So some of these AngularJS patterns that I'm talking about are JavaScript, because now Angular is written on TypeScript, root scope, compile, controllers, and component directives. We also provide app statistics again. So in this example, we outline the criteria that you have and then exactly what we found. Here we found 2 controllers that will need to be converted and 1 AngularJS component. We found roughly 18,000 lines of code, which puts you in a ballpark a little bit above rewriting your entire application from scratch, and a file count as well. The recommendation section is important because it identifies exactly how you can convert those AngularJS patterns to Angular compatible patterns. So if you find root scope, we recommend converting them into services. When we find controllers, you want to convert them into AngularJS component directives, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. And finally, we have this files to prepare section. Again, we identify all of the patterns found in each and every file so that you can start from each file when migrating. So I'm really excited to actually start announcing some new features that we've created. Right now, this is a command line tool that you install as an npm package, and then you just run a command. But that's not really able to reach all the developers out there. So we wanted to create a desktop application. You can view your results a little more easily using this Electron app. A very popular request is an automated template conversion tool. There's an API that we're going to use that syntactically transforms your AngularJS HTML templates to Angular compatible HTML templates. So all those little directives you had to just slightly modify, like ngSource. Now this template conversion tool will do it for you. And finally, we're improving our enhanced analysis through AST parsing. We want to provide a more accurate search criteria and get more accurate results for your recommendation, so it truly is customized to each and every application. I'm really excited about these features, and I think you guys should be too, because they really are out there to help you, and this is all coming from the community. We've asked you what you need, and now we're trying to provide it for you. So what's next for ngMigration Assistant? I want you to tell us what we can do. Reach out on the forum that I'll post later, and tell us exactly what you would like to see with a migration tool approach. Now, why are so many people switching to Angular? That can seem like somewhat of an obvious answer. Coming from a developer, you understand the technical benefits. But just to reiterate, Angular is fast, it's simple, and it's built on the modern web. So we really want to emphasize you building new features in Angular. Some of the key differences that occurred when switching between AngularJS and Angular were a component-based architecture and TypeScript. Now, a component-based architecture helps standardize and simplify how we build AngularJS applications and Angular applications. If you follow the rule of one approach, you can simplify and organize how your application is built so that you have one component per file. You can also use component directives, which help bridge the gap between a directive, which is in AngularJS when we're talking about directives, and a component, which is in Angular. Component directives were introduced in AngularJS version 1.5. They truly bridge this gap because before you couldn't just jump from a directive to a component. And I want to outline really what the key differences are here. So a directive, as we know, is just markers on a DOM element that are compiled to manipulate HTML elements and their children. This is an example of what one directive looks like. A component directive is just a specific type of directive that allows you to define templates and controllers and bindings. And an Angular component defines a class associated with an HTML template that then defines and displays a UI. So this is how we transition from a directive to an Angular component. And this is a big step when using different migration approaches. Now, the other aspect is TypeScript. Switching to TypeScript can be as simple as installing the TypeScript compiler, switching your extensions from .js to .ts, and retroactively adding types to your functions and variables. It isn't always that simple, but for many applications it can be. TypeScript allows for enhanced error reporting and reduces runtime errors because it's catching it in build time. And that's a huge reason why they switched to TypeScript. This in turn produces a faster time to market if we're catching more bugs in build time. So I want to talk about a forum that I created in conjunction with ngMigration Assistant. It's called ngMigration Forum. And this is a community hub where you can go and learn about migrating in general. It's community driven, it's community updated, it's community run. Though I created it, it's really kind of a platform to let you guys adopt what you want from it. And I want to show you what it looks like. So if you come here, you'll see this is the front page, and right here I have actually included my slides to this talk. But let's go to a ngUpgrade page. This is an important page because we get a lot of questions from different developers on how can they sell to the decision makers in their company why switching to Angular is so important. You know the technical benefits, but translating that into business benefits can be difficult. So we outline the major changes that occurred between AngularJS and Angular. We identify the benefits of using Angular. And one of the key ones is that Angular is not just a framework, it's a platform. There's a huge team dedicated towards helping you. And they're out there in order to provide a better experience when using Angular. We also have a migration paths overview page. This is a key aspect of the migration forum because here is a first place where you can kind of understand all of the different migration approaches out there today. It identifies the key differences between two different migration approaches, which would be incremental and big bang or rewriting from scratch. Incremental is essentially taking one part of your application and building it up in Angular, whereas big bang is dropping it where it is and starting new. It then identifies the different migration approaches that are within those two sects of migration. So for example, it has ngUpgrade, Angular elements, routing or hybrid routing, code conversion, rewriting from scratch. And if you want to learn more, you can just click on the page, and it'll identify exactly how these migration approaches work. So for ngUpgrade, it tells you exactly how it works. It also provides the different types of ngUpgrade. So now there's ngUpgrade for performance, and then there's also the whole package as well. It gives you the preparation steps needed for using that migration approach. So for ngUpgrade, you have to be at a minimum threshold to start migrating. And part of that is slowly transitioning out of those AngularJS patterns that we found. It identifies different testing, and most importantly, it gives you the awesome tools and examples out there today to help you understand this migration approach in a real-life application. So each one of these migration approaches has a page similar to this, and it's helpful when trying to understand the differences between them. We also have a helpful contents page, and that's where we list articles, talks, and tutorials that can help you with your migration approach. This is where you can present new ideas that you've just published about migrating into this talks page. If you want to share radical new ways of migrating or hacks or anything like that that you've written an article about, given a presentation on, or created a class for. And we also have a consulting page. We really want to encourage you to use consultants if you need them. There are lots of different types of consultants, and some are tutorials, like Sam Julien's class, which is a 200+ tutorial class. Others are like Narwhal that will help you with your larger application. When you need consultants, reach out to them, and consultants can post information here on what they do and how they can help you. So let's talk a little bit about the different migration paths that I mentioned. Incremental migration is a step-by-step process. You take one part of your AngularJS application, bring it to Angular, and now you're up one step. And you continue doing that until your entire application is now an Angular application. Some of the ways that we use incremental migration is by providing a hybrid application where you're hosting AngularJS and Angular at the same time. You can convert old AngularJS features while creating new Angular features. And this approach is really great for medium to large applications and large teams because you can't just drop everything and start fresh. You might need to be able to continue having that application exist, and so you want to be able to continue building new features. Some of the incremental migration approaches out there today are Angular Elements, which Aaron Coughlin talked about yesterday, ngUpgrade, which Sam Julien talked about yesterday as well, and hybrid routing. Hybrid routing is essentially having two applications, one hosted by AngularJS and one hosted by Angular. So Angular Elements is essentially a bottom-up approach. You use a custom HTML element that's automatically bootstrapped, and this is a framework-agnostic approach so that you then wrap it with an Angular component. ngUpgrade provides a hybrid application, again where you're hosting AngularJS and Angular at the same time. You use the ngUpgrade module, which then can allow your applications to interoperate seamlessly. And routing, or otherwise known as a hybrid routing approach, is where you can use the built-in Angular and AngularJS routers or UI router. And it is always considered the very last step in your migration approach, so that you have converted everything from AngularJS to Angular and you no longer need to support the AngularJS framework. So Big Bang migration is kind of an all-at-once migration. As Sam Julien says, you have to kind of burn it all to the ground and then start new. You allow that AngularJS application to grow from all of those ideas that you've always wanted to use. It's a fresh start. You can finally use new techniques. You're not strapped with that AngularJS application anymore. Especially if your application is riddled with bad practices, you can kind of leave it in the dust and start with this fancy new framework. This approach is really great for small applications. Now I want to apply these principles that we've just talked about and discover kind of which migration approach fits your project. So yesterday, as I've spoken several times, Sam Julien gave a presentation on ngUpgrade and how it can save you time and money. And I really want to reiterate the points that he made because they are very fundamental to how they improve your migration approach. So you need to assess your team's size, capacity, and experience when deciding which migration approach is right for you. You want to also assess your project architecture, dependencies, and build process. And these two sectors compiled together help determine which migration approach can fit your team and your project. So when do we use Angular Elements? If you're a large team, I recommend using Angular Elements because it allows you to build features really quickly. If you have an enormous code base, which is roughly 200,000 lines or more, that's kind of a guess, then you're probably too large to burn it all down to the ground and start again. If you have a complex build system, you're probably going to want to use Angular Elements. And if your app is built entirely in AngularJS and you are really ready to use Angular, then start using Angular Elements. Some advocates that we have for Angular Elements are Aaron Coughlin and Narwhal. These two people, Aaron Coughlin and then Victor Savkin and Jeff Cross, really emphasize that Angular Elements can get you off the ground quickly with starting to use Angular. So I want to recap a little bit about what Aaron talked about yesterday because she mentioned some very important points. And Angular Elements is kind of relatively new, and it's not that well documented yet, though we have good documentation in Angular.io, but not a ton of people have actually started using it. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't. So 3 of the main points that Aaron covered is that Angular elements are custom HTML elements. This allows you to approach it in a framework-agnostic way so that you don't have to have this ferocious in-depth knowledge of Angular, but you can actually start building applications and building components quickly. You want to think of components as a black box containment where your dependencies and your data are contained within the component. And finally, we want you to try it. There are more and more teams trying it every single day, and they're seeing lots of successes and lots of rapid successes with using Angular elements. Don't be afraid to try it, because I guarantee you it's a little bit easier than what you actually think. So when should you use ngUpgrade? If you're a small to medium-sized team, ngUpgrade might be right for you. If you have an average code base of around 50,000 lines, ngUpgrade could be right for you. If you have around over 100 components, that means that you have a relatively complex application. And if you have some AngularJS or some Angular in your application, then ngUpgrade can help you build that hybrid application that you might be looking for. Some advocates and proponents of ngUpgrade are Sam Julien. He has this amazing course called Upgrading AngularJS that identifies every aspect of how you can migrate using ngUpgrade. And when should we rewrite from scratch? This is a great approach for tiny to small independent teams or projects. If you have a code base of around 3,000 to 5,000, roughly around there, lines, it means you have a relatively small project, and you might be able to kind of burn it down and start new. Again, if you're riddled with tons of bad practices because you kind of went wild with AngularJS, because it was that way, then you might want to start with new standardized techniques and start with a better application. So I want to encourage you guys to participate in this community because it is an amazing community. You guys are all there to help each other, and lots of people have actually built tools that probably solve the problems you are already facing with migrating. They're just not publicized enough. And so that's why you can go to the forum that's at this QR code or at the URL and find out different tools that can help you migrate. You can publish new information that you have on migrating. If you've created an awesome open source tool that you think the world could benefit from, publish it here. If you want to have your questions answered, publish it here. If you want to read about the general migration processes, come here. If you want to use ngMigration Assistant, also here. So I highly recommend utilizing this forum. It, again, is community-driven. So if you have something to share, something to say, you can do this. You can post it up there. Thank you.